Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to HerbRally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. Today's episode is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour, our interview series. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Jesus Garcia. Actually got to visit Jesus on our road trip about back in January from Wisconsin to Oregon. This isn't from that trip. We actually had to do this interview via Zoom. It's always more fun to hang out in person with the herbalists, but you do what you got to do. But yeah, it was great to sit down with Jesus, get to know him a little bit more. In today's episode, we talk about chia, red clover, oak, teaching herbalism to children, the Herbal Action Project, fire rituals, altars, and a whole lot more. I really love talking to Jesus. I think you'll really enjoy this episode as well. You can learn more about Jesus at the herbalactionproject.com. Again, that's herbalactionproject.com. And of course, links will be in the show notes. So a huge thanks to Jesus for joining me on the Herbalist Hour. Also, before we get into the show, I want to say a huge thanks to our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Your support means a lot to us. You're really helping us keep the lights on around here at HerbRally headquarters. So thank you so much for the support. If you, dear listener, would like to learn more about the HerbRally Schoolhouse, you could learn more at herbality.com/schoolhouse. And basically what our members receive is exclusive herbalism classes that you won't find on the podcast, you won't find on YouTube, with lots of different herbalism teachers. And they also have the ability to join us live for these Herbalist Hour interviews via Zoom. So that was a fun perk we just started doing about a month ago. It's always fun to have our HerbRally Schoolhouse members join us for these interviews. So again, herbality.com/schoolhouse, enter coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. All right, that's going to do it with my rambling today. Hope you enjoy this episode with Jesus. Hope you enjoy this episode with Jesus Garcia. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Jesus Garcia. Welcome to the show, Jesus.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure for being here and speaking with you once again. We're doing a little cleansing with cedar just to give us some nice relaxation for our conversation and, some good spirits to come through and channel in this particular beautiful podcast that we have going on.
Thank you so much. And, I tend to get goosebumps easily. I don't know what that is about me or not, but right when you started waving that around everywhere, my whole body just went up in goosebumps. So it was very relaxing. I know you're all about the fire, so I brought some of your wild dog with me.
Yes. I'm glad it got there. Nice. And that wild daga is definitely one of those beautiful entities of plant spirits that we have to really just soothe the body, calm the nerves, and get us back into who we are, bringing value back into ourselves. So I'm glad that you have it next to you.
I love this plant. And, I interviewed Leon Bruno, who owns Puff Herbals, and she's got a blend with daga in it as well. And I was like, oh, I just learned about that plant from Jesus when we visited you in Austin, Texas, or just outside of Austin. So thank you for the gift. To kick things off, I usually kind of get background about the herbalists, like their herbal journey. But for you, I'm kind of curious, we just passed summer solstice. So I was just kind of curious what you did for summer solstice.
Yes. Yeah. For those of you that are kind of new, my name is Jesus Garcia. I am a traditional shaman and Mexican light worker and energetic worker as well through traditional rite. And one of the things that we really practice on, and this is kind of more of a personal, herbalist connection of what I really kind of gear towards herbalist, is practicing through different ceremonies. And since we just had solstice, we had a community gathering where we did some blessings, just kind of like what we just did with cedar. To really bring us into transition into the new light of the sun, and how the power of the sun can be so grateful for our hearts, and helping us to really bring things into light and into fruition, how we want to move forward. And so we did a few cleanses, which was an egg cleanse where we use an egg and kind of move it around the body and cleanse the energetic spirit body. And then we also did, of course, a herbal cleanse that we used some cedar and some traditional sage and some desert desert sage to really bring us back into who we are in our ancestral right. And so we had a beautiful group turn up. It was a little bit more than I expected. And it was great to have a few facilitators and partners there really supporting this level of work. And especially with summer, we tend to have aggravation come up a lot. We tend to have frustration come out a lot. And there's also a level of play that we have some fear around. And so the solstice and this celebration that we did last night was very much to connect to that child self and to play in a meadow that's sunny, vibrant, and beautiful.
Was this on your property?
We did one on our property for more of like our private students who are like first year students, so they can really understand, the properties of this traditional circle. And then we did a public one at West China Tea House in Austin. And that was really beautiful because we got a lot of different organizations that were there that are kind of working in separate stances. And it was beautiful to see not only people of color, but other people from different nationalities and different generations coming through, wanting to explore this work and give great appreciation into the herbs and botanicals that were there in community.
Love it. All right. Well, now let's get into Jesus's background. I'm curious, what was a young Jesus like, and how did that transition into your interest in herbalism in general?
Young Jesus, I do have to mention that young Jesus went through a lot of transitions, and
Sure.
you know what? That's something that's amazing. And growing up, I grew up near Eagle Pass, Texas, near Piedras Negras, where I was born. And Piedras Negras has a big influence into my work as far as traditions, because my grandmother and my grandfather, they both were earth workers. They both really were the ones in the neighborhood that had everything growing, had community always around the weekends. We had spaces where there was ceremonial rite, and we had gatherings that were very much intentional to what was happening in our traumatic movement as far as Mexicans. And this is something where the indigenous cultures really came through and the spirits came through. And I, as a young child, would always wonder the spaces. I was always the first one to jump into situations that were a little bit scary. And I was also the caregiver of so many different children in our neighborhood, because there was an aspect of me taking care of the smaller spiritual aspects of childhood. And so that was really great to know that at a young age, I had so much responsibility, and I had so much beautiful and amazing ways to transform myself as someone from indigenous right, to really be the caregiver at age 6 to really kind of facilitate, our communities that were going through trauma, that were going through poverty, that were going through situations that were very strong and unfortunate at times. And it was great that I was the leader of all these children, and I still do it today as a preschool teacher. So that kind of led up to my work, and I always try to figure out foundation of like, well, how do I bring these traditions that my great-great-grandparents and grandparents brought into this new world of America? How do I blend those together? And so it has been years of me trying to figure out formulas of spiritual worth, also with the traditions of, the values that make me happy in this world. I didn't just want to have a 9-to-5 job. I did want to have security, but how do I implement these traditions that are in a way dwindling down, and we were so scared to let out and let other people in? And that's part of the work that I do today. And I became a clinical herbalist, a little bit after high school, and I found myself in a way in the medical world not necessarily connecting to my ancestors, and so it became a little bit stale. And this is where I started to implement certain practices like limpias and baños and healing pláticas and meditative connections through the botanicals that were ancestral, that we worked with at a young age, and my parents and grandparents did. And so it became from a perspective of having a lot of fear as a child, to having now this exposure of really bringing forth spiritual herbalism and what that is in my lineage and the Latinx movement as well.
Yeah. I had the fortune, Amanda and I had the fortune of spending a couple days with you and your family, and you are very good with the children. And Amanda and I still talk about, I don't know if it was your nieces and nephews or not, but they just ran up and gave us big hugs, total strangers. And yeah, we were just so delighted by that. But thank you for sharing your story with us. if I'm remembering correctly, I want to say you spent some time at Herb Farm as an apprentice. Am I recalling that correctly? Okay, cool. I was hoping you could share with the HerbRally audience what that experience was like, and maybe some of the benefits from doing something like that.
You know, Herb Farm, I can go on forever, but I'm gonna try to keep it.
Sure.
You know, the main thing that happened at Herb Farm to me that I took from it was very much it was transformation. It was very much madrone medicine, as we call it. And actually, I had a conversation with Rosemary Gladstar about this at a conference, and she just came up to me. She's like, "You have this madrone, and transformative connection into it." And that was a tree that I really didn't necessarily connect with, because I was there to be a farmer. And so when I applied to the internship, and those who are not aware of Herb Farm is a beautiful, amazing botanical farm and in Williams, Oregon, and they have an internship program almost every season. And I was fortunate enough to be in their fall 2018 fall internship, and I had the opportunity to really figure out how to create my own farm. And that was my purpose. It's like, I need to be here to understand, to learn. I already have the spiritual connections from my ancestors, but I am just here to learn how to create my own farms all over the world and really generate this. Well, that didn't happen so much because, while I was there was a lot of spiritual connection and entities and many different reservations around Herb Farm that really opened my spirit up into understanding that this level of work, spiritual herbalism, is needed today. And so it prepped me in those forms. And I think around the midpoint of my internship, I had a massive breakdown and breakthrough. And the sisters that I had there in the internship program really supported me through taking care of rituals that were coming out through my ancestors, and really brought back a traumatic movement that I was holding on to for trying to be American and trying to live in this American dream and sacrificing, my indigenous rights. And within that, the sisterhood there and the people there, my brothers there, really helped me through ceremonial work on how to really blend those together. Because as medicine makers, we're working so alongside the plants, but we often forget that the spiritual medicine is always there when we're working with the plant. So we started to discover ourselves through song, through play, through natural wonder of what the farm had to offer, and also through ancestral connection of ceremony, that I would create certain ceremonies outside whenever the days were very long and our bodies felt very weak. And some of us wanted to give up around certain times, because being a farmer is a very hard transition. And so our bodies were changing, but also our spiritual worth was changing. And I got to be a guardian for so many people that walked in and visited us. And that was something that I was not expecting. And of course, the madrone medicine came through around that time. My grandfather was going through some troubles. He was leaving this world while I was there. And so when I was stuck in the mountain, I had nowhere to go, and I had to send energy to my grandfather that was passing away. And so that really helped me to understand that death is part of the process. And when we harvest an herb, that is part of the process of really giving gratitude for something that we're taking from the land and we're using it as medicine. And so that really helped me through the transformation of what I needed that I didn't know that I needed. And my ancestors came through not only for me around that time at Herb Farm, but everyone else that was there that needed to be fed with spiritual connection, especially through the botanical play.
I love that you really focus and honor your ancestry, and you're really trying to pursue this herbalism that's specific to you and your heritage. And I'm just kind of curious for, maybe folks that are, say, more estranged from their ancestry, such as myself, I suppose. I don't really feel any sort of strong lineage or cultural significance in any type of way, but I do have some sort of say spiritual side, definitely. But I'm just kind of curious for your herbalists who may be more lean on the sciencey side of things. How does one do you have any recommendations for someone to start learning about spiritual herbalism and just kind of getting into that realm of study, if that makes sense?
Oh, it does. And you know what? You mentioned a key word that I am very, very much, I find a lot of transformation through science. And so I love the whole connection of how how plants work, their chemistry, their alchemical responses, and, even what they do to the body in response. And I started to understand a little bit more when I would do drop doses, when I would take just a little sip of the certain tincture. And, I would feel a movement in my physical body, yes. But then I felt something else. Emotions started to come up, and certain emotions that I didn't understand, that had feelings and backgrounds to, like you said, like I got these shivers when we lit this, and those are different cues for us to really venture into the spiritual connection of what plants can bring us. And we did a class last night with Verse Scarlet Sage School in San Francisco, and a lot of the students there were very much coming from different lineage, and a good percent of them were like, I don't really know my lineage. And I'm like, well, you're working with calendula. What is calendula really bringing to you? Yes, you're feeling it in the physical sense, but what memories are coming through? What visions are coming through? What particular emotional and spiritual pulls are surrounding you around this time? And did anything, when you're working with this plant, did anything happen? Did the radio turn on? Did your grandmother's picture fall from the shelf? And I think these are ways that we can connect with a singular plant and talk to a plant in a way like we love them, like they're part of our family, so they can share certain generation cues that maybe were brought from our ancestors. And so there's a lot of us, most of my clients that come to me don't have generational background. They're lost in a way. And I think the plants, just having them sit down, I think we did a meditation with you this past, this winter, and sitting down and just receiving what is happening and receiving almost the clarity too. And I love when something doesn't happen, because sometimes we need a moment to just pause and to just be clear and to regenerate our source. And, that's when our ancestors come through. That's when, our lineage rights come through, and almost in this particular way of a void, to really regenerate what you need in that moment. And it's all brought to you from the plant. I always tell people, like, I am not here to try to heal the world and be a title. I'm here to really generate for you. I'm here to connect those particular cues for you, so you can do this at home, so you can connect with your plants at home and find out what is happening. And you, by journaling this, you can go back to it like, whoa, in September this happened, or this particular number keeps on coming up, or this name keeps on coming up. Let me figure out what's going on here.
Something came up when you were talking. You spend enough time with the plants, eventually there's going to be some sort of spiritual experience anyways. And I remember when I was first starting in Columbine's School of Botanical Studies, I didn't know that I was going to have a spiritual experience in that class. They don't even promote it that way. But then you spend enough time in the old growth forests in Oregon, on the Western Cascades, looking at tiny flowers through loops, and eventually you start to feel extremely connected, and it is a borderline spiritual experience. Probably along the spiritual lines and something you practice, you actually started the show this way with fire. I'm just kind of curious if you could kind of delve more into, say, the ritual of use of fire in your practice.
Yes, there are three main things that I do with fire, and fire is definitely one of my elements. A lot of people that meet me, they like, well, you have kind of this earth, connection, but there's a lot of fire in what you're doing. And so fire comes through a lot more of a sister for me. And so the way that I honor her is to really create altars. And so I'll have a space where if it's two people, maybe me and a client go in, I'll light certain things like sage, or what in this aspect too, I'll light certain incense that really can permeate through the body. And I'll ask for, forgiveness of connections that we're trying to burn through as well. And so fire is very much in the season of summer. And that's the element that we work on. And this is what we're learning in my second year studentship, apprenticeship programs for my students, is that, we connect with fire in many different ways. We heat, our teas, we bring infusions into it. And then we also offer the first cup of this tea, of this botanical tea, to the land and to the fire connection, to the fire spirit. And within that, we also do smoke ceremonies, like smoking the wild daga or smoking lavender, to really cool the system, but also bring that beautiful blend of how fire can move within us and speak within us. And the same thing goes to when we're creating sage bundles. We're thinking about how they're going to be lit, how they're going to be used in ceremony, and what they're going to do, how their smoke is really going to entrance and support us into the level of divinity. And fire is very strong when we are connecting with the past selves of who we once were, and even our child selves, things of trauma. Those are very fiery emotions. And so instead of us trying to throw water at it to cool it down, we want to walk with that fire. We want to walk with those burning stones and meet that person halfway to understand that it's going to be okay. And we can all work this position almost in that same sense how we think about the witch trials. We become one with the fire, and then we become one with the air and the elements around us, and we never really go. We're always here. And so fire is such a spiritual, beautiful entity and element that we work at with as a guide.
Yeah, you mentioned altars, and I was just kind of hoping you kind of veer in that direction. What is it to be a living altar, and how do you create that in your space?
It's an everyday process, my friend. And so we are of the flesh, so therefore there's always heat running within us, and there's blood always running within us, and certain emotions can, drive fire within us. And so it's up for us to really understand what is happening in that moment. If we are triggered, let's say in that way, if we are triggered in a moment, that fire starts to boil our blood. And so for us to really take a moment to understand, oh, there's a change happening here. I'm feeling really warm here. How do I use this for my advantage? Let me walk through the situation versus spitting out that fire. And so being a living and walking altar is part of the human connection that we don't really associate. And it's something where, okay, let me take myself back, into a nice, safe space and create an herbal steam with this fire. How do I transform this fire around us and put it into this connection? Or maybe I just need to be fed. Maybe there was an emotion that was triggered that is part of my past self that wants, some nice, beautiful soup. And so we can work with those particular cues of fire and, really find a dance within that fire versus trying to run away from it.
This question just came up. I'm curious, where did you learn a lot of this stuff? I'm like, is Jesus just reading a bunch of books, or some of it just seems borderline innate, or maybe say passed down? But where did you get a lot of this type of information?
Okay, well, it might be strange to some, but sure. A lot of this I was taught at a young age, especially through difficulties and trauma. Like we were unhoused for a while. We were living on, in gas stations coming to America. And, those cues came back from my grandparents and great grandparents of their lineage on how to work with the elements and how to be one with what is happening in our soul body. And within that, I would seek guidance from the higher above. So, my guides, my angels, my ancestors would come through. And I was always that child where I needed a lot of space and a lot of time just to be. And I never found myself connecting to any community, but the community that was always there were spirits. They were always there with me, and they were always in that present moment to find security and to channel. And this is kind of what we do. So before I opened up this podcast, this talk with you, I have an altar outside that we lit some wild daga, and I sat with the spirits. I sat with them and really helped them to come through me and to understand, how to move and how to really bring conversation. So a lot of the times I am channeling, I am bringing in spirit into this position, but I don't necessarily see that as a way to distract myself from the human living. I try to blend everything together. And as someone who's also, in charge of a church, I need to be present in both the physical and the spiritual realm, so I can devote myself to every single community that's out there that's needing this level of healing. And while I do have books, I read a lot, I'm neurodivergent. I am neurodivergent, so I've always have books around me, and so I need places to escape, but I often find that just taking a walk outside in the forest, you're going to receive the true answers.
Well, I suspect part of being a shaman is the ability to remain present. And one thing I love about you is your extreme intentionality behind everything you do. And that's really neat that when you hung out with Rosemary Gladstar, she experienced that as well. And I remember, yeah, when we were doing our plant meditation on your land, yeah, that's one thing I noticed is just I felt very present. And in that moment, that was like magic in itself. And, speaking of Rosemary Gladstar, I want to say you just did an event at the American Botanical Council with her. Probably that's in the Austin area. Can you tell us about, did you get to get any sort of learnings from Rosemary, or what was that interaction like?
Well, anytime I'm around Rosemary Gladstar,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to learn something. There's something there. And the things that we really talked about that kind of pierced my heart. I was there asking more clinical questions, for a few clients that I have, a few patients that I have. And, it changed into a position of her really kind of teaching me the value of ancestral right and not to be scared of it. And we talked about the transformative movement that is happening right now with herbalism in itself. And so we had a position where we were having conversation openly on how spiritual herbalism is needed to this day, and elder medicine, how elder medicine is very much, needing to not only just be written in books, but also displayed and have this conversation. And yes, I was at the American Botanical Council, and that was very beautiful to be a guest there and to be alongside so many different herbalists that have paved the path of North American herbalism. And I was invited there to do a mushroom meditation, ongo meditation. And in my lineage and in this beautiful, amazing connection of Mexican source, I got to really channel Maria Sabina, which is, of course, like one of the well-known curanderas that had brought mushroom medicine into this world. And so I did a little mushroom meditation with everyone around us to really feel secure in the boundaries of where we were. And we had a lot of newcomers and a lot of different people that have never really experienced a meditation before. And so it was great to be in community and to be surrounded by, this magic that these herbs can bring, and how the mushroom can really connect us all together in a mycelium network to explore ourselves in wonder and to be part of this union that we call herbalism.
I was actually hoping you could talk a little bit about your relationship with mushrooms. I had no idea that you were also into mycology and everything, but of course, you're a Jesus of all trades. Can you tell us more about your lineage and how it relates to mushrooms?
Yeah, so mycology has always been one of the foundations, in my traditions, especially in my lineage, right? But more so the Latin American movement as well. And, mushrooms have always been in the Amazon for us to discover, whether it be Azteca rite or Mayan, Mayan rite, and also Mesoamerican connection. And that's something when I was at a young age, that was one of the first botanicals that I actually took as a medicine. And my grandmother was responsible for that. And she really my grandmother's name is Maria de Lefrugio, and so she really brought a lot of love and care into reishi. And she always had reishi in a big beautiful plate when I was young, because I was born premature. I was born with physical disabilities, and I had also passed away as my mother was giving birth. And so the medicine that called upon her was working with mushrooms. And so she went out to one of her healers and brought back this beautiful plate of reishi. And
Wow.
she had that reishi for, I think, up to when I was 6 or 7 years of age. And every night she would give me a little bit of the reishi water,
Wow.
the reishi infusion, the reishi tea. And that mushroom became a part of me. It became this understanding that it really was healing not only to my physical self, but my spiritual and mental self as well. And so I started learning about mycology at a young age and foraging at a young age. And it wasn't until probably I hit my teen years that I realized, whoa, there are many more botanicals that I can introduce, with my medicine, and then how other people in community would also receive this. And I use mushroom medicine as meditation, as clairvoyancy. And I know there was the question before where how do we bring spiritual connection into our bodies today and into our practice today. And so that's beautiful, because we go into a mushroom forest in Oregon, and where We're trying to find them. And as humans, we want to see them. But if we take a moment to just calm down, to connect to the earth, to really receive what is happening around us, those mushrooms appear. They come out and they said, I'm right here. You may be looking for turkey tail, but I'm reishi. Hello. And so that's how, foraging works whenever you are trying to connect to the spirit of the mushroom, to the spirit of this mycology network. And yes, I am a mycologist. I always say I'm a curandera first, so, spiritual connection to botanical is always there to lead me and to guide me.
Yeah. Dear listener, I dare you to, if you've never tried strong reishi decoction, just sit down, be present, and try, a glass full. And I'm telling you, like, that is straight up spirit medicine. And that's one of those medicines that I'll occasionally just not neglect, but kind of forget about in a way. And then I'm like, oh, I need reishi in my life because it seriously makes me feel so happy. I'm drinking oat straw infusion right now, which is nice and grounding and nourishing, but like there's something about reishi. And I actually did make a decoction just the other day. So got to keep that in the self-care routine. Speaking of self-care, I saw that I don't know if it was a class you taught recently, but you were speaking about the importance of self-care for yourself as the practitioner, because sometimes maybe we're always healing others, or you are, and sometimes people might forget to actually do the self-care part of it. Do you think you can kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yes, that is what my work is all about. I used to just teach foundational budding herbalism classes, and I moved away from that a few years ago to really teach practitioner. And so all of my classes are practitioners from around the world. And, I teach the importance and the care of really bringing back forth how we are sovereign, how we're delivering this medicine. And through that, this is where my culture comes through, because I have downsized some of my ceremonies into how we can bring it back into the practitioner's office. And so normally I always give a cue on, if we are going to be bringing in patients and clients, one thing to do is to open up space. Get into your space there before anybody else does, and to do a fire ceremony, do a limpia around, the rooms that you're going to be blessing, and ask your guides, to support you and to assist you into the level of care for your clients. But that always comes to mirroring ourselves, right? Standing in front of a mirror and protecting yourself as you are your own client, really bringing back that care. And like we are working with oat straw, which is one of my favorite, teas to work with, botanicals, because it gives us a beautiful sensation to be in an open plane and to move around like the wind, and to connect with this beautiful community of so many different oats around us, but we're all moving together and creating this beautiful golden wave of being calm, being centered, and opening up to ourselves to something that might be vulnerable. And that's okay. So I always tell a practitioner, open up space that way and close space that way as well. You might be working in a mobile clinic that's going to be 10 hours, but open up the space where the mobile clinic is at, and, bless yourself with the botanicals that are working through you and with you. I just did a mobile clinic class where we were working a lot in wild harvesting skullcap, and everyone's like, oh, I wish we had some sage to bless the skullcap. I'm like, let's use the skullcap to bless the skullcap, and then bring that medicine into us. Let's embody that skullcap medicine, and we'll open it up this way and we'll close this way as well. So it's very important that in between client and, in your practitioner connection to client, is to also consider yourself as a client, consider yourself as a patient, and more importantly, bring back that value that really brought you into fruition and abundance of the work that you're doing now, because healers need healing too, and it starts with us.
That is such a great tip, to start it with self-care, end it with self-care, just sandwich it together with self-care. That almost just seems like great advice in general for whether you're a practitioner or not, whether you're heading to your 9 to 5 in the office and stuff like that. So I love that tip. I also wanted to bring up you brought up the oats in the field, waving in the field. And I don't know if you've ever seen Robin Rose Bennett has a oat meditation, but that's essentially what she's saying. Yeah. It's actually on our YouTube channel. It's from her book, The Gift of Healing Herbs. And Robin Rose Bennett is awesome. But she actually, for HerbRally, recorded her walking you through the oat meditation. And so you're going to be on Rosalie De La Fourier's podcast tomorrow, or you're being interviewed tomorrow. And when I was on it for her podcast, I did a 30 days of the oat meditation, 30 days of oatmeal, oat top extract, and then oat straw. So for 30 days, I did all 4 of those, and I really started embodying the oat plant. So that was pretty sweet. But speaking of plants, let's talk about some of your other favorites. I know I saw on your Instagram page you talked about chia once, which is particularly interesting to me. I want to say that's a salvia genus, which is essentially a sage. So I'm curious if you'd talk about chia as its medicinal aspects, but also just your relationship and why you love it.
Yes, first I will give, gratitude of where this plant came from in my lineage to the Aztecas. And so the Aztecs really used chia a lot in not only creating gardens and forming different ways of food, because we can eat the entire plant, but it's also there as a wonderful angelic spirit. And so chia has always been something when I'm asked to do, garden designs for something or somewhere. And even we just did a recording for KLRU PBS, Texas Gardens. And we worked a lot with the individuals that were here filming with chia, and they were very much, almost open this way where they're like, we didn't even know that we could grow, chia here in Texas, let alone eat it and consume it and be part of this, not only nutrition, but also part of its medicine. It does contain many omegas. And so it really keeps, the skin hydrated. And it's also really beautiful when we are placing it in altars to connect to our spirit guides, and also for limpias, when we're really just kind of brushing the chia on the skin and really giving some moments to calm down the body. And so chia has always been one of my favorite plants just to connect as a child, because they grow very tall and they're very whimsical. They have these beautiful florets where they kind of have this little spin that goes up into the skies, into the heavens. And they have these really beautiful, small, tiny purple and white flowers where all the hummingbirds and the bees come, and they're all in unison working together. And chia is also one of those strengthening warrior plants. And so not only is it feminine in that way where it moves into the wind, it's also standing tall for us. It's also really giving us that beautiful, amazing connection of what it is to be a warrior and what it is to share the plate. Creating a saute with chia as you're giving it to your fellow, brothers and sisters and spirits that are around us, to really connect into the sovereignty of what it is to share and share that position of culture. And so that's something that I always plant in my gardens. And it's probably one of the first things that I actually put into seed. And we do a seed ceremony with it around fall. So around fall, we'll have like a big bowl of chia seed, and we'll give it a nice, beautiful blessing with some smoke. We'll introduce some water, and then we'll wait for 24 hours for the chia to really be completely engulfed with this water. And then we'll play with the beautiful, amazing connection of the texture of chia in our child self as we're blending it with our hands, with the dirt, connecting to the element of earth. So it's one of my favorite plants, and it's probably going to be one of the plants that I leave this world with, because it is so abundant and it creates so much of a beautiful shift within ourselves.
When you said saute, are you sauteing the leaves?
Yes, we're sauteing the leaves. And let me tell you, from the South, we also, I like to fry the seed heads. And those are really good if you do some nice batter with it, and then just kind of fry them a little bit. And if you do like a, pancake batter too, or a cornbread batter, let me tell you, those are really good.
I love it. Yeah, I've only ever say drop some seeds into the water and got the mucilaginous slime, and I consumed it that way. I never really realized you could consume the rest of the plant, but of course it's a sage. So that's really neat. Thank you for sharing. How about trebol or red clover?
Trebol, red clover, is definitely a spirit plant. Actually, I brought one of my students. We channel spirit cards, and we create spirit cards, and we have trebol right here that actually called out when I pulled this magic card for us. And trebol is a beautiful spirit card that not only is it keeping us grounded, but it really helps us to move forward into the position of how we want to step into the light, how we want to be in security of ourselves, and how we want this flesh, this body, this vessel to really enjoy the fulfillment of the human experience. And so trebol is always one that comes through, especially for children when I'm working in pediatric centers, or when I'm working with the child spirit. Trebol has this bouncy energy. It's really soft and sweet, and really brings forth that connection of swaying, yes, in the wind, but more importantly, just kind of finding its own right. It's kind of scraggly when it starts to grow. It falls over everywhere and it's trying to get into places. And to me, I just love how that is being, exposed on the top center of the ground, because I know that underneath the beautiful, amazing connection of the roots, they're growing like angels. And so I know that there's this as above, so below connection of clover. And every time that I sit with clover, I'll do a clover bath for myself every time I'm channeling my child self or on my birthday. And I'll fill the tub with just clover blossoms, and I'll sit there as, this beautiful tea to really connect into the flow and the energy that the waters can infuse this wonderful blossom into the blossom of me, really moving forward into the new self and how I want to give up and let go of things that no longer are part of me.
I love that. Plant people are so awesome. Red clover I saw it blossoming in our neighborhood the other day. I was like, Amelia, look, it's so beautiful. We just get so excited when we see it for the first time that year or whatever. And it's just, you can't help but be happy when you see that flower blooming. So
such a joy.
It really is. It really is. So if you don't mind going over one more, I saw you post recently about oak essence. And I was just very curious what you got going on there.
I do have some oak essence with us.
Nice.
Yeah, so oak essence is very much I say, grandfather for me, comes through a lot. It's a very, wise and knowledgeable and almost passive, tree. And sometimes we need that if we're running around too fast and we have a long checklist and we have a lot of things going on in our mind. Oak helps us to be grounded, yes, but oak is also there for us to receive wisdom and to talk through the wisdom. Sometimes knowledge, it's such a beautiful curse for us, because the more that we know, the more we want to do, and the more we want to get out and really try to accomplish these things, these projects. And so oak, just by hugging it, just by being next to it, that bark, that texture, and that strength that it gives us a moment to pause. It gives us a moment to understand that, hey, there are other things and other people and other entities around us, and we should be acknowledging that as well. It's not about me. It's not about, the show that I'm bringing. It's really much about how we connect with community. And the way that oak essence works internally, it's a very strange movement, because there are many essences in the world, but this one in particular, it really brings us strength and clarity within our work and our value, and how we want to be elders, how we want to distribute this work and be authentically ourselves and speak in truth and speak in honesty. And there are times where that medicine is needed for us. Maybe there are certain things that we know for a fact are causing us trouble or pain or hardship. And oak is there to kind of put that nice hand on us and say, it's okay, just breathe. It's okay, brother, just let it go. You're going to be fine. And so I love that oak can do that for us, and to really strengthen our bond into the connection of the botanicals that are around us. And not only that, but the people that are going to be underneath the oak, looking for shelter, looking for connection, and really bringing back, knowledge that is sincere. And we often see pictures where, oh yeah, let me go get a book and read under a tree. And I always think about that. Yeah, bring your work to oak. That oak can bring you some wisdom, and oak can really be there as a guardian, as a caretaker, as a parent that we probably didn't have around times that we really needed to find answer.
Is there a particular oak you're fond of? Like, is there one in Texas? Do you have the live oak where you're at, or?
We do have the live oak. One of my favorite ones is the Quercus virginialis. So that one in particular, it grows very uproot strong, but then the branches, they grow outward and they start to fall into the ground, kind of creating this wave where they're going into the ground. And anything in the Quercus family, like, I'm just a big fan of. In particular, the Texas live oak or the escarpment oak is definitely one that brings us cooling sensation for a lot of us. And there's many neighborhoods around here. Well, I'm outside of Uland, Texas, and the escarpment oak is always such a pleasure to see, to just stop. And I find myself when I'm driving back and forth to just kind of stop underneath an oak and just give it a nice little presence moment of, I see you, I know you're here for me, and I know that you've been going through some difficulties in this drought, and I feel that drought, and I'm going to share this energy with you.
I'm a big fan of the Oregon white oak, and I always forget the species. I think it's Quercus garryi or
Gary,
Garryana or something.
yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know what came over me, but when Amelia was born, or like after she was born, I actually got permission from a local park in Eugene to plant a Oregon white oak with her placenta. So
Wow.
yeah, I definitely have a connection to oak as well, and yeah, I could see how it'd be very like a spiritually strong plant. So thank you for
Mm.
sharing about those plants. Do you have any tips as far as for working with children and herbalism?
Yes. The first tip is go back to your child self. Get
Mm,
back to how you were, to
that's
your
great.
7-year-old, to your 6-year-old self. Remove the connection of the knowledge that you have now, and learn from the heart how the child wants to be guided, how they want to be talked with, and what makes them safe. And so, and whenever we're making gardens, especially for public schools, I always think about different shelters. There's actually I have a lot of things going on my drawing board, but one thing that I have up here is building a safety nest, and how we can really hold these beautiful children in this nest, and how we can really devote ourselves and having them build their own particular safety net. And so whenever I'm working with a child, especially if they're going through trauma, if there's something going on, I always have them kind of picture in meditation of them being a little birdie and them going out and collecting things that they need, and then we'll kind of take them outside into the gardens and have them create their own nest, and from that it transforms into a fairy garden, and they start to put little things like crystals and really beautiful small trinkets that make them happy. And oftentimes I see myself in that work a lot. Those are beautiful botanical play aspects where we take away the clinical side of like, oh, okay, this is what's going on mentally, this is what's going on physically, and we connect into like, wow, they're in a safe space now, so they can talk to us on what is really going on, what is the root of their problem, and how they can really bring us into their life, because they're seeing us in a different viewpoint. And as a child, I remember the world was scary. The
Mm.
world was also wondrous, and there was so much that we could do as children, and the time seemed long. And so we forget that as adults. And if we put ourselves in that essence of our child self to connect with a child, then it's going to be much more easier to really understand them in their woes or troubles, and also their fulfillment, what they want from us, and how we can guide them as elders.
I knew you were going to bring it on that answer, so thank you for sharing. One thing I love about my new town that I'm in, Appleton, Wisconsin, walking around, especially right now when the weather's so nice, I'm seeing all sorts of these like trees in the neighborhood, and around the base of the tree is like, yeah, trinkets and toys, and like little, like they're creating like little homes out of the other like sticks and stuff like that. And every time I walk by one, I'm like, oh, there's another fairy home. And yeah, it's just really, really cute. And sweet. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Let's hear more about some of the projects you're up to. Can you tell us what the Herbal Action Project is?
Yes, so the Herbal Action Project, I'm the founder and the director of the Herbal Action Project. And I do want to give appreciation for my niece, Jaslyn Jade. That was something when I came back from Oregon, and I was trying really hard to figure out, how do I teach adults? How do I teach adults the foundation of herbalism? And how do I bring this into their homes? And so I worked a lot with my niece around this time. She was in 4th grade. And we did a lot of these same things of playing in the garden and harvesting the herbs, and then putting the herbs into food as sovereignty, into our food, so she could take it as medicine. And I realized something very strange is that, her teacher was seeing a change in her, and then she was seeing a change in her group of friends, and she's like, I don't know what you all are doing. And I'm like, you know what, we've been doing a lot of these particular types of therapeutic botanical play. And I understood for in that moment that we needed to embody the child connection of herbalism. And that's something that we don't talk about children's herbalism a lot. We talk about clinical herbalism and practitioner herbalism, and that's great. We have so many books for that, but we don't have the books to really connect with the child who's going to dedicate themselves into the evolution of the next herbalist when they become older. And so I started to understand that we needed to really imply what herbal actions really do for us into the botanical play. So the Herbal Action Project is a project. It is a community-free initiative where we go to different schools, and especially kindergarten schools, and we teach them the foundations of budding herbalism at a young start. And this is something that is very precious for me in my work, because it turned into this evolution of not only teaching the child. Now the parents wanted to get involved. The parents wanted to learn more and how to heal their child, and how to go out and make salves, and how to grow their own food. And that started to go into the projects that I'm doing today, which we're working with Sanctuary Holistic Kitchen right now outside of Georgetown, where we work with the children and we work with the parents, and we bring the parents down to the child level so they can learn how to play with chia and certain plants that are going to be abundant for not only their physical self, but for their emotional healing as well. Parents go through some stuff, but so does the child, and they interpret it a little bit different. So by us kind of connecting more into the food is sovereignty classes, we get to really cook with the child, harvest the herbs, grow the herbs, and see the togetherness of relationships of parents, really bonding back. And I'm not here to say that, I've saved a few relationships, with parents, but it helps us to really discover different volumes of ourselves that are vulnerable, because children are so honest. They're so blunt in that way of displaying emotions sometimes, that we get to be part of that notion as well. And so the Herbal Action Project, we're having quite a few different, tributaries on different networks that we're working on right now. And this is part of it. It's us really having this discussion and this podcast, to bring parents into the fulfillment of herbalism and how we want to bring spiritual care through the gardens. And so we have quite a few gardens all over the world right now. And, we're working with them on bringing that curriculum into play.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to, say, be involved with the Herbal Action Project, is it a requirement that well, you just said the world. So I was wondering if it was like, say, an Austin-based or Texas-based thing, or are people able to be involved even if it's like, say, worldwide?
People are able to be involved worldwide by many different things, and that's virtual connections of me holding virtual classes, which will start back up. We're in our what I call is our dry winter season in Texas, because the heat kind of, destroys a lot of things if you don't have a greenhouse. But, we do normally do some internships that are online for parents that are worldwide. And you get to see this with certain partnerships like Land of Verse. Like what last night we taught, a foundation class on spiritual herbalism and practitioner herbalism and parent and child herbalism, where we get to really teach all of these foundations and many different subgroups. And the education is there. But if you wanted to join us, in the physical sense, we're always looking for volunteers and help to support not only the smaller groups and charter schools and private schools, but also the community groups. I work a lot with the Mexican American Culture Center, with their gardens, and everyone is involved there in community. So they can seek us out at herbalactionproject.com, send us an email on there, and we're always there to reply and to respond. And of course, in the Instagram and Facebook, we are Herbal Action Project as well.
Awesome. And you're also Shaman Jesus on Instagram, if people want to give you a follow there. But the show's not quite over. Let's get to know Jesus a little bit more. Curious, do you have any random hobbies outside the realm of shamanism and herbalism?
Wow.
Yeah.
So that one, you definitely stopped me on that one. It's like when you ask, it's like, yes, well, my hobbies are saving the world, but in my personal life, I love to just, this is going to sound really strange, but I love my alone time. I love just walking, by myself and, taking things slow. The work that I do is very fast paced. And so what really helps me is just to be in a wonderful Taurus, lonesome world, to rediscover who I am and how I'm, connecting with it. And yes, whether are modalities like sound healing and therapies that work really well for me, but the teenager, self of Jesus, I really love to listen to Metallica and just jam out,
Really?
and
That's awesome.
kind of get some aggression out in that way, and
Yeah.
work the land, and designing different land cues by music. I think music for me, it not only strengthens the childhood, and I know I mentioned Metallica, sorry,
I love
but
it. I love it.
we'll go with AC/DC, maybe we'll go some Ted Nugent in there, maybe we'll and there's definitely time where I go back into my emo self and listen to some Dashboard and just let the emotions kind of run through with plants, with the botanical connection that really moved me. And to me, I always try to embody my child self, and the one that comes through a lot is my teenage self. There was a lot of transition there, and so I try to really have fun and create a celebration when I am alone, when I am walking the land, and I'm listening to music that kind of pierced my heart, and it's changing different algorithms in the work that I do today. So I'll give you that one.
I'm really glad you shared that. Several times on the show so far, I've admitted, I'm a big hip hop head, and no, I appreciate you sharing that. And do you remember the song "The Unforgiven"?
Oh yeah.
I was just telling my daughter about the crazy music video, and I used to watch that music video over and over when I was also a teenager. And you're absolutely right. I'm like rediscovering a lot of the music I listened to when I was a teenager, which was like, say, alternative rock of the 90s. And it really does carry a certain emotion to it, and it just really brings you back and makes you feel good. So thank you for sharing. Let's do a random card from the Let's Get Deep Friends edition. I don't know what this is going to be. Okay. This one's all right. We can skip it too, or do a different one. What fun or clever usernames have you created?
What fun or clever usernames have I created? This is in the line of that teenager self when we all had AOL accounts, right? And we went to chat rooms. But I think one that comes through a lot is Jesse Mexi. Like that was that was pretty bad. It was like, I'm gonna own my Mexican nationality. I am here. And I think that was, and a lot of people call me Jesse, when I was really young, and that was a little nickname, and I still kind of embody that. Like I'll meet childhood friends that randomly who would be like, Jesse, and I'll turn around and be like, oh hey, or they'll say Jesse Mexi, or it's hilarious how these usernames, like once we look back at them, we're like, wow, what was going on?
So the rules of the game is I got to share two.
Okay.
And
you're getting red right now.
Yeah. Oh, it's just kind of an embarrassing story. So, kind of. So I remember.
Is a safe space.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no one's listening. It's just you and me. So, my name's spelled Mason, and I remember one time in 6th grade, I got in trouble. And if you get in trouble, you're supposed to write your name on the chalkboard. Like that's what this class did. And so I went up to the chalkboard and I misspelled my name Mason. And the teacher noticed that and knew that I was being a smartass. And so he made me rewrite my name and then put a check mark next to it, which is even worse. So I made my screen name Mason 3 or something like that. But so pretty dumb. And then I had another one called, there used to be this basketball player I liked. His name was Hot Sauce. He was on the and one circuit. So I called myself Mild Sauce.
Mild Sauce.
But yeah, that's also going back to the AOL Instant Messenger days. Yeah, those were some good times.
Those were good times.
Oh yeah, I used to chat on there for hours and hours and hours. So, let's kind of wrap things up. And I'm kind of curious. I usually end on what's your favorite part about being an herbalist, but you already did a video for us on that, which we just released, I want to say, a few days ago. So I'll link to that in the show notes. So if you want to hear Jesus's answer to that, I just genuinely curious, where's Jesus going from here? Like what fun projects you have? Like where do you see your work and yourself going in the next few years?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of answers to that, but one thing that's coming to mind that I'm in transition right now. Summer always is very difficult for me as a practitioner, as someone who's bringing, this care into the world. And one thing that I noticed this year is that there needs to be more of me. And I'm only one person, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to really branch out into the knowledge, that I hold dearly, to apprenticeships and to different people that are ready to walk into the light of spiritual herbalism and bring that into different, connections and houses. And so I'm teaching teachers right now, school teachers, how to become herbalist and how to really bring foundations into, their play. And I'm also seeking for assistance on individuals that want to, either dedicate a zine or, a book or some sort of online resource where it's going to be community given and supported. And one thing that I find that I always am being told, which it does kind of, makes me a little bit upset. And this is in the line of, don't praise the herbalist, praise the herbs, is that you can't do this without money. You need money to make it happen. And so I kind of find that as a rose thorn, because in a way, I see so many different herbalists who have accomplished many different things, and they're using traditions that either indigenous or they're from cultures that were not from them, and they're working with plants that don't necessarily have that praise of their spiritual worth and generation worth. And I'm here to kind of change that. I'm here to kind of really open up the pathway of, yes, we can dedicate ourselves in a grassroots movement to send out information that doesn't have to cost so much money. We can also learn how to create a tincture, without spending the $3,000 just to get a budding herbalism certificate. Yes, my grandparents and my generations have been teaching this freely for a long period of time. And it's up for us as responsibility of herbalists to share these gifts to community. Herbalism is a community healing aspect where it's much more than an art form. It becomes part of our everyday life. And if we get to share this to lower class communities and individuals that really need it, then why not? It doesn't take that much to get into a conversation with someone and open up the door for someone that really needs these generational modalities. Like, I'm here for that. And that's, I think, the next step is creating a foundation on not necessarily a nonprofit, but really share this information in a perspective where every household can listen to us. Every household has a dedication on how to cook with these herbs and how to really sit in their car and do a ritual for themselves. That is my position in this world. And I'm not going to give in to the money, because, that's something where I have seen, unfortunately, corrupt some herbalists that, I really hold dearly. And where this is a learning position for all of us. And we get to really explore this through where it really matters. And that is with the family first. That is with the communities first. Street medicine is a great way to understand this. Open up a mobile clinic and start giving away free medicine, and then understand how value is going to be back. The donations will come to supply you and support you. And if you ask for help from other herbalists who are maybe have an abundance of Tulsi, then your apothecary is always going to be stocked. So asking for connection in that way, and to ask for friendship and creating those bonds are really going to strengthen how we want to devote ourselves into this free, beautiful connection of generational herbalism. So that's my next step. And I'll be thinking about it in the next few months on how to make it, more international. But I have, clients and practitioners from New Zealand, from Japan, from all over the world. I had someone from the Azores, a few weeks ago who really wanted to connect into spiritual herbalism. So we can send that information out and really create and strengthen a circle, a bond with other herbalists to share this for free. Then I know that I'm doing my work somehow.
You saved the best for last, Jesus. I love it. You really know how to tie a bow on the podcast. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Herbalist Hour, sharing yourself. I always love being in your presence, even though it's, virtual or whatever. I'm stoked to get to hang out again in person at some point and do a round two or, just hang out and smoke some daga with you. But
yes, it will happen.
I really appreciate you joining us on the show, Jesus.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you for everything you're doing and sharing the light that we all hold dearly and really expand. You're part of this world too, Mason. So thank you for being a friend. And for everyone that's listening, we're here for you. This is an open and safe circle.
Love it. Thank you so much, y'all. We'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, Jesus. Have a good one. I'll be in touch. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.